How you doing? Good morning. It's Uncle Lou here. Is it too early to talk about next year's Heisman? Of course it is. It's not even February. Of course it's way too early. So we're going to talk about it. It got brought to my attention the other day, some of these Heisman odds. I was asked about them, and I'll be honest, I hadn't even looked at them. Actually, what brought it up was in some initial Heisman odds that had been released, I guess, immediately following the national title game. Georgia third string quarterback this past season, Brock Vandagriff, had better Heisman odds than Georgia's backup this year, Carson Beck. And that was weird to a lot of people because it's assumed Carson Beck will be the starter next year unless something weird were to happen during spring practice or fall camp or, God forbid, an injury or something like that. But that was strange. Anyway, so it got me to look at the Heisman odds. And I figured, why not go ahead and make a video, not about the Brock Vandagriff, Carson Beck deal. And in fact, in the couple of weeks that's gone by since the Heisman, that problem has fixed itself there. I don't know what that sports book was thinking, having Brock Vandagriff with better odds than Carson Beck. But, I mean, you're talking about two guys that have never started a game anyway. The idea that a Georgia quarterback will win the Heisman might seem less far-fetched now than it did a year ago. I mean, Stetson, the greatest college football quarterback to ever play the game, did make the finalist list and earn an invite to New York City. But the idea that in the preseason a Georgia quarterback who's never taken a snap would have any Heisman odds at all would have been unheard of even a few years ago, right? Now, other teams, it almost doesn't matter. Like Ohio State, we know they're losing C.J. Stroud. Well, do you know who's replacing him? I guess it's going to be, is it Kyle McCord or whatever? Point is, even if you don't know, you could safely assume that whoever Ohio State's quarterback is going to be somewhere on the Heisman list, right? They just put up big numbers every year. Alabama quarterback, Lincoln Riley quarterback. I mean, there's certain places Georgia wouldn't necessarily think that. But anyway, I've got the current Heisman odds pulled up here on the computer. I hate sitting down to do these types of videos, but I did want to go over some of these Heisman odds. Let's see, how's that be? How'd that be? I think that'd be just fine. How you doing in that? Yeah, Uncle Lou's sitting down for you here. Salute to your national champions, by the way. Back to back. Yeah. Should I do a video on national title odds for next year? I wonder which team right now, which team currently has the best national title odds for 2023. I wonder. Maybe I'll do a separate video on that tomorrow or later today even too, and also. Anyway, this is about the Heisman. And some things on here that surprised me, right? Again, the whole Brock Vandagriff, Carson Beck thing was a big surprise, and that's what got me to look at the list. Now, that's been fixed on here, but there are some things on here that I think will surprise you. Something that won't surprise you, who has the best odds to win the Heisman this coming year? This is according to DraftKings, by the way. If you want to sign up for a DraftKings account, make sure you put in promo code Uncle Lou, one word, no spaces, all uppercase letters, Uncle Lou. Sign up for a DraftKings account. Use that promo code. You'll get you some free money. But anyway, what won't surprise you is who has the best odds. And, of course, that's Caleb Williams. You're talking about the returning Heisman Trophy winner, right? Going into the last preseason, who had the best odds to win the Heisman? Bryce Young. Why? He had won it the year before. I mean, if you're a returning Heisman winner, you're going to be on this high on the list the following year, right? So it's no surprise to me. Caleb Williams right now, according to DraftKings, has the best odds at winning the Heisman in 2023. His odds are plus 500. I'm not going to go into detail on how betting works. But plus 500 means if you bet $100 and win, you get 500. That's what that means. So as I go through these odds, they're all based on $100 bets. You don't have to bet $100. If you bet 50, you get half the odds, right? So if the odds are plus 500 and you bet 50, you'd make 250. If you bet 100, you make 500. Bet 200, you make 1,000. It'd be double. I think most people understand how this stuff works. But so Caleb Williams is the odds-on betting favorite right now, 8 months before the season even starts, at winning next year's Heisman. And I've got no issue with that. He's the returning Heisman winner. Lincoln Riley's quarterbacks that put up ridiculous numbers. Every single year he's been a head coach, right? He's already got 2 Heisman winners. He turned Jalen Hurts into a guy that actually knew how to throw the ball, which is something he couldn't do at Alabama. No surprise, Caleb Williams on the top of the list at plus 500. Number 2 might be a surprise to you, though. Most people, when they talk about Heisman for next year, they think about 3 names. Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Bo Nix. Why? Well, those 3 players were all in the Heisman discussion, all 3 of them, all season this past season, and all 3 are returning. So it makes sense that you would think of those 3. And they're all really high on this list. But none of them are number 2. Tennessee quarterback Joe Milton, not number 2. Let's see, other returning quarterbacks that played well last year. Cade Klubnik at Clemson, not number 2. We're going to get to these. We're going to get to these names here in a second. Number 2 on this list, behind Caleb Williams, odds plus 1,000. Florida State quarterback Jordan Travis. Now, Florida State is going to get a lot of hype this offseason. And I'm not saying it's undeserved. They had the best year they've had in a long time this past season. They have a lot of key parts returning, and they've done really well in the transfer portal. Things set up for Florida State to have a good season in 2023. Now, that's not the point of this video. I'm not here to debate whether that's warranted or not, or what I think Florida State's going to do in 2023 or not. But when you look at it from that perspective, it makes sense to me that Jordan Travis would be really high on a preseason Heisman odds list. He comes in second on DraftKings at plus 1,000. At number 3, you get Drake May, the North Carolina quarterback who impressed all of last year. He's back. I don't have any questions about Drake May. I do have questions about the rest of North Carolina's team, though. I honestly do. They lost a lot in the transfer portal, and I'm not sure after what I saw defensively from North Carolina this past year. And then now they've lost their entire secondary basically through the transfer portal. It's hard to imagine North Carolina's defense taking a leap forward enough to get Drake May to a Heisman. Even if Drake May ends up with the best numbers, right now it looks like North Carolina is not going to be a good enough team overall, win-loss wise, for Drake May to actually win the Heisman. But he's third on this list, and I think that's fair given the numbers he put up last season. Number 4, Michael Penix Jr., another returning quarterback from last year who put up ridiculous numbers, announces he's coming back. He's up in Washington, so the Pac-12 very well represented here. 2 of the top 4, 3 of the top 5, because Bo Nix is next at plus 1,400. He's actually tied with Michael Penix at plus 1,400. So Bo Nix at Oregon, Michael Penix at Washington. They're going to put up ridiculous numbers. 2 names to keep an eye on for the Heisman race for next year. Where does Joe Milton come in? Of course, the replacement for Hendon Hooker, who's off to the NFL. Hendon Hooker, probably the most controversial name that was left out of the Heisman finalist category from last year in terms of getting an invite to New York City. A lot of people felt that he should have been invited. He was injured in the next to the last game of the season, unable to play in the last game of the season, and then missed getting invited to New York by basically 1 spot. They invited, 4 players? Caleb Williams, C.J. Stroud, Max Duggan, and Stetson Bennett. Nico was 5th. So had they invited 5, Nico would have been the 5th. Nico, I'm about to leave you? No, Hendon Hooker. But Joe Milton is on here at plus 1,800. Those are the odds for Tennessee quarterback Joe Milton. I'm going to be honest. How are Tennessee fans going to feel if Joe Milton comes in and puts up basically the same type of numbers that Hendon Hooker did? Now, obviously, that means the offense is going to have another good year, right? Because those were good numbers that Hendon Hooker put up. I guess the angle I'm getting at here is, do you really think these quarterbacks are all that good, Hendon Hooker and Joe Milton? I'm not saying they're not. That's not what I'm saying at all. But Hendon Hooker couldn't complete a pass at Virginia Tech for 3 years. He comes to Tennessee and puts up Heisman-type numbers, right? Joe Milton, same thing. Couldn't get on the field at Michigan. Now at Tennessee, he's going to lead them next year. If he puts up similar numbers to Hendon Hooker, and really, I don't know that it's possible to put up better numbers than what Hendon Hooker put up last year at Tennessee. But if he puts up similar numbers, what does that really mean about the Tennessee quarterback situation? I don't know. It's just an interesting thing to think about. They got Nico coming in, and that's great. But, you know, if you look at Tennessee from a team perspective and try to kind of forecast maybe where they're headed, even if Nico is better than Hendon Hooker and Joe Milton, and I think Nico is a better pure quarterback than Hendon Hooker or Joe Milton, either one, how much better can his numbers really be? How much better offensively can Tennessee be with a better quarterback? The steps that Tennessee needs to take to move forward from where they were at last year to where they want to go, I'm not sure quarterback is how you get there. Like, quarterback is not the issue, right? It's defense. This will be an interesting year for Tennessee because I don't expect the defense to be a whole lot better I think the offense is probably going to keep clicking right along, though. So I wouldn't be shocked if Tennessee has a similar year. But they've got Joe Milton 7th or 8th here in the odds at plus 1,800. A spot ahead of that, who I skipped over, is Sam Hartman. He transfers to Notre Dame from Wake Forest, another guy that's been putting up ridiculous numbers 2 years in a row in the ACC. Now he gets a quote-unquote big boy job at Notre Dame. And this is interesting because if you look at Notre Dame over the last 10 years, they've had really good teams in most of those years, right? Even made the playoffs a couple of times. The weakness for Notre Dame, unlike Tennessee, has been the quarterback position, the skill positions in particular at Notre Dame. They've had good lines of scrimmage. They've even had some good tight ends. And they've had some good defensive players. They put a lot of people in the NFL. What has held Notre Dame back, in my opinion anyway, over the last decade. Now some of their fans will tell you Brian Kelly is what held them back. And maybe that has something to do with it, but I think specifically Notre Dame's issue has been the quarterback position. That's why this is a big deal and a big get, I think, for Notre Dame to bring a guy like Sam Hartman in. If he can have similar production at Notre Dame to what he had at Wake Forest, Notre Dame's going to be a much better team in 2023 than probably anything we've seen out of Notre Dame in the last 10 years. Good enough to make the playoffs or win the national title, that's yet to be seen. Again, they'll have a huge showdown at the end of the year with Southern Cal. Not getting into schedules today, but it's just very interesting. Notre Dame bringing in a proven quarterback that we know can put up ridiculous numbers. We've seen him do it, and not a flash in the pan situation either. We saw him do it 2 years in a row. Sam Hartman. His odds are plus 1,500. He's, I guess, 6th. Joe Milton, I guess, 7th on the list. Quinn Ewers at Texas comes in after that at plus 2,000. This is interesting because you got the Arch Manning situation going on, right? And I don't care how much Texas fans love or like Quinn Ewers. And maybe there's some that are on the fence, right? Even if you're Quinn Ewers' biggest supporter, when you bring in a guy like Arch Manning, I've been through this as a Georgia fan. When you bring in a recruit like Arch Manning, that decorated, that sought after, all the accolades, all that, and you know he's on the bench, every single time Quinn Ewers throws an incomplete pass, it's going to be interesting to see the Texas fans' reaction to that. How much patience are the fans? Forget the coaches for a second. And I know the coaches are what matters because they're the ones that have to make these decisions. But I'm curious, as a college football fan, how much patience the Texas fans are going to have with Quinn Ewers this season if things don't start out well. They play Alabama early in the season, again, this time on the road in Tuscaloosa. Now, Quinn Ewers played well enough to win that game against Alabama this past season. He got hurt and was unable to finish the game, but he played pretty well enough anyway. We'll see. It's just an interesting sort of angle to keep an eye on there. He's in the top 10 of the Heisman odds, Quinn Ewers, but because the backup is Arch Manning, it does feel like Quinn Ewers is going to have a short leash this year for the Longhorns. After you get past those 8 names, you start to get into more of the what I would refer to as kind of long shot type players. You're talking about people like Jaden Daniels at LSU, Drew Allar, who is going to be a first-year starter at Penn State, J.J. McCarthy at Michigan, and then Carson Beck at Georgia comes in there at plus 2,500. That sort of rounds out your top 15 there. First running back on the list is Travion Henderson at plus 3,000. So again, these are like long shot type odds in my opinion. If you're looking to sort of take a flyer and really hit it big, should one of these guys win, one of these 2,500 and below type odds players might be something to keep an eye on. But Travion Henderson, your first running back on the list at plus 3,000. Cade Klubnik, the Clemson quarterback, also at plus 3,000. And Blake Corum, the Michigan running back, also at plus 3,000. So you got two running backs there tied for best Heisman odds at plus 3,000. Puts them around 15th overall in terms of Heisman odds, preseason anyway, 8 months out. These odds change constantly, obviously. Going a little bit further down the list, you still have Brock Vandagriff on this list. He's at plus 3,500. So Carson Beck, who it's assumed will be the starter at UGA, is plus 2,500. Brock Vandagriff, who it's assumed will be Carson Beck's backup, is plus 3,500. We'll see how it shakes out in spring practice there between those two. You got Gunnar Stockton kind of waiting in the wings there as well. Clemson has their second player show up here on the list with plus 5,000 odds, running back Will Shipley. He could have a really big year at Clemson. They brought in a new offensive coordinator, Garrett Riley, Lincoln Riley's younger brother, ran TCU's offense this past season.
Will Shipley's the best player on that team, in my opinion, and really there's no one else that even comes close. I'm curious to see how Garrett Riley's going to use him. If you're looking to take a flyer on a running back, in other words, not pick one of the favorites as a running back, which would be Blake Corum and Travion Henderson, maybe Will Shipley would be somebody to keep an eye on. But actually, in terms of long shot odds, who's my favorite long shot, regardless of position? If you're really looking to cash in on some long odds, I'll get to it here in a second. He's not much further down the list, but just some other interesting names for some of you that might be curious. Spencer Rattler, the South Carolina quarterback, plus 6,000. Jalen Mildew, the Alabama quarterback, depending on who you ask, is at plus 5,000, right? Now, Bama's got another quarterback behind him, Ty Simpson. Most of the fans that I talk to, they prefer Ty Simpson over Jalen Mildew. Now, Jalen Mildew was their backup this season. He's the one that played when Bryce Young got hurt. He's the one that started the following week when Bryce Young couldn't play, and we didn't see that much of Ty Simpson. But Ty Simpson actually has better Heisman odds on DraftKings than Jalen Mildew does. So maybe the Bama fans are right, and it is going to be the Ty Simpson show this coming season in Tuscaloosa, not Jalen Mildew. Ty Simpson's odds are at plus 4,000. Jalen Mildew's odds are at plus 5,000. Now, my favorite long shot. This might be the best player in college football not named Brock Bowers. Actually, let's talk about Brock Bowers before we get to my favorite long shot. Brock Bowers is at plus 10,000. That's one you could put $1 on. If you bet $100 on Brock Bowers to win the Heisman and he wins it, you're going to win $10,000. 100 would win you 10 grand. It's going to be extremely hard for a tight end to win the Heisman. It might even be harder for a tight end to win the Heisman than it would be a defensive player. And there are one or two defensive players on this list as well. I know the LSU guy, Harold Perkins. He's on here somewhere. Can I find him? I saw him earlier. Where is Harold Perkins? Is at plus 15,000. So Brock Bowers as a tight end has much better odds than Harold Perkins as a linebacker. But I would be shocked, really, if either one of them were to win it. I mean, we know how these voters are. Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback for Colorado, Deion's son, also at plus 15,000. So some interesting names here. But my favorite long shot on this list, the one with sort of super long odds, has a chance to not only be invited to New York for the Heisman ceremony, but I believe has a really good chance of winning it. And he plays a position that's not quarterback, but a position that has won the Heisman Trophy very recently. Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver for Ohio State. Now, in my opinion, the only reason his odds are at plus 6,000. I think his odds would be a lot better if there was a proven commodity coming back at quarterback for Ohio State. But obviously they're losing C.J. Stroud. Now, there's no reason to think that whoever Ohio State plays at quarterback isn't going to put up astronomical numbers. Every quarterback they've had going back a decade or so has put up ridiculous numbers, it seems like, right? So, I guess it's going to be the Kyle McCord or whatever his name is. But to me, it really doesn't matter who it is. A guy like Marvin Harrison is going to have catches. He's going to have numbers. If I was looking to put $1 on one of these long shots on here, sort of a plus 5,000 or lower, Marvin Harrison Jr. might be the way to go. He might be the best player in all of college football. He's definitely going to be the best wide receiver in all of college football. The guy's unbelievable. And his odds are at plus 6,000. There's a lot more names on this list. If you guys want to check it out, just you can Google DraftKings Heisman odds or DraftKings Sportsbook and find it that way. But it's just kind of interesting to see how the betting public 8 months out is viewing some of the top players in college football for next year. Anyway, let me know down below, if you were going to take a long shot, who would you put your money on? Have a good morning.